The Quilting by Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1872 to 1906. Dolly sits a-quilting by her mother, stitch by stitch. Gracious, how my pulses throb, how my fingers itch, while I note her dainty waist and her slender hand. As she matches this and that, she stitches strand by strand. And I long to tell her life's a quilt and I'm a patch. Love will do the stitching if she'll only be my match. Okay, this is a poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar. He was born in Ohio. His parents were slaves before the American Civil War, and they were freed by the American Civil War. Dunbar started writing poems at a very early age. I think he was 6 years old or something like that. And he was known as a poet, a novelist, and a writer of short stories. So this poem is a love song. It's a love poem. It's that he's sitting there watching Dolly, who is a girl of his age, and she's making a quilt and making a patchwork quilt. This I think is a very American thing, to make a quilt, a blanket, by stitching together different pieces from different pieces of material to make a beautiful quilt. And he is transfixed by her. He's looking at her and he's in love with her. And this poem is telling how he is, how much in love he is with her, and how just looking at her, he feels this love, but he doesn't dare tell her anything. He doesn't dare say anything. So she doesn't know how he feels, and I guess, and for that, he doesn't know how she feels as well. She probably feels the same, but that her mother is there as well, and he's just looking at her. So Dolly, this is the girl's name, sits a-quilting by her mother, stitch by stitch. Gracious, how my pulses throb, how my fingers itch. So Dolly's sitting there and she's making a quilt, and this is just looking at her, just being close to her, seeing her there, is having a physical reaction on him. His pulse is throbbing, dum 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 dum, and his fingers itch. Oh, I'd love to hold your hand. One thing that's quite interesting with this is, let's see, Dolly is quilting, and if you look at these first two lines, then this is made of little patches. So Dolly sits quilting by her mother, stitch by stitch. Gracious, how my pulses throb, how my fingers itch. So it's as if there are these little different bits, these that are going to make up the patchwork of the poem. While I note her dainty waist and slender hand. So he's looking at her waist, which is very small, and her hand, which is very thin, and he's looking at her, and he's head over heels in love with her. And as she matches this and that, she stitches strand by strand. So she's putting the two bits together, different bits together, and piece by piece she is making this quilt. And I think almost here this echoes time going by, from our lives go from one patch to the next patch to the next patch, and these are held together by these stitches of time. They are stitched together by time. And I long to tell her life's a quilt and I'm a patch. So here he starts with the metaphor, this very nice metaphor, that he's he wants to tell her, but he doesn't dare tell her, that life is a quilt and I'm a patch. Love will do the stitching if she'll only be my match. So love would sew the two of them together, would stitch the two together if she would only be my pair, if she would only be my girlfriend, if she would only be my go out with me. So I want to tell her that life is a quilt, that I'm a patch in this patchwork quilt, and love would do the stitching, would hold them together if she will only be our match. So in this he's joining the idea of the quilt and the two of them being patches and being joined together, and the whole poem it's stitched together with these different pieces, and there's something keeping them apart, and I think he is too shy to talk to her, but there's something here, there's some sort of barrier. This is likely the presence of the girl's mother, and perhaps if they were alone he might say something, perhaps not. So, The Quilting by Laurence Dunbar.